committee is in attendance, I'd like to see us deal with it in order. So if I need to make a motion to move it forward, R3 and R6, I'll do so, but otherwise, they are sitting patiently to see the outcome of it, and often we will move things forward for residents.
So
I'll move the committee's recommendation that we implement internet-only voting.
Just clarification then from the clerk. Last week at committee, that recommendation was defeated by a vote of count or of committee. We've come to committee for someone to move the identical motion again. So I guess that's what happens. That's what happens every week, I suppose, at council. That but I just like some clarity. We voted and it was defeated last week, and now the exact same motion has been put forward at council. I'd like some clarity on that.
Anyone wants to point to a part of the procedure bylaw that disallows that? I'm not personally aware of it at this point, but if somebody would point to that, I'd be happy to take a look.
it was defeated last week at GC, as we pointed out by a few people, but there was no alternate put on the floor. So we're essentially in item 6, which is looking for direction.
And that was my understanding. There was no recommendation that came out of GC. We defeated something, but nothing alternative was. And so just to get the discussion moving, I thought I would move forward with the committee's recommendation. But we do have a memo on the agenda with regards to this issue whereby the clerk has suggested that because of legislative timing, we need to pass that bylaw, which would enable us to continue to consider all 3 methods. If that recommendation is more palatable to the members of council, I'm happy to put forward the recommendation by the clerk to move forward with the bylaw that still allows for the possibility of any of the different voting methods, and then we would continue the discussion and information will be provided to all of council between now and I think the clerk identified May 23rd as the drop dead date. But either way, I put the motion on the floor just to get the discussion moving.
Already seconded? Okay, yeah, and I'm not going to add to it because we're not going to have that discussion tonight. I think we're going to have that discussion when we get that full report back. So I'm in favor of moving forward. Obviously, I was in favor last week of proceeding with internet voting, but I'll save that for our discussion when we get the report back, and hopefully everyone around the table. This is a compromise to at least get that. I know there's concerns around the table to get more information. So this is a way we can all get that more information that we're looking for and feel comfortable in that decision that we make when that report comes back. So
could I have some clarity on what it is the motion that's on the table, please?
Mr. Clerk?
And I'm asking because I'm looking at item R6 and it's giving an executive summary and it's saying options include the adoption of a tabular only, asking staff for more information regarding internet-only voting, and asking staff for more information regarding a hybrid voting model. So I would be all in favor of that if that's the motion that was put forward.
If I'm understanding Councillor Thompson's right, it's to provide information on all 3 of the options, and as well as pass the bylaw this evening.
As for point of order,
Point of order takes precedence.
and all I was asking was, Councillor Thompson, the motion he made was to move forward with internet-only voting. The other stuff wasn't included. So whether or not there's friendly amendments, so I know Councillor Abel was asking for clarity. The motion on the table, at least as I understood it, was internet-only as the option. And so I just like to know what that is, what we are talking about.
Mayor Dodd, I believe that Councillor Thompson is trying to amend the motion of the internet voting only that he gave to be passed the bylaw and come back with information regarding all 3 of the options in the report.
I think we need to move forward. Obviously, there was a number of people around the table that expressed concerns over a variety of pieces. So in consultation, to be able to give everybody a chance to get more information to resolve some of their concerns that were expressed last week. I believe the clerk has come up with let's call it a hybrid solution whereby we meet the legislative requirements to pass the bylaw by May 1st, but it still allows us the opportunity to explore, be it the internet-only model, be it previous models, or a hybrid model. It buys us essentially 30 days. And so, if council's acceptable with it, I'm happy to move that.
I just go to the clerk. This does not bind us to internet voting, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Dodd, not at all.
So I'm all for in favor of moving forward. We have to pass the bylaw anyways. And in the event that we find some hybrid, or we go internet only, or we stay, we are only suggesting that we've got the bylaw that will allow that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, am I correct in that?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, sir.
Okay, Councillor.
I'll be in support of that motion and supporting Councillor Thompson's motion.
I'm not sure how much a few weeks would matter in terms of finding additional information. For myself, I did vote against it, although, whether it's internet voting or not, I'm happy either way. But the two big variables that I have is financially, there's really no big savings in terms of from the research I've done, aside from a handful of municipalities, there hasn't been significant increase in participation. So those are the two main reasons why I voted against internet option. And I don't see those two variables changing in the next 4 weeks. And so I'm wondering, it buys us time to be more flexible and to kind of rethink. There's nothing wrong with that, because I'm a big believer that over time, new information may come that may change our minds. But given that those are the two big reasons for myself and for, I'm sure, others, I don't see that information changing over the next few weeks. But I'm always into being flexible and giving latitude. So I'll be in support of Councillor Thompson's amendment.
I went into last committee meeting prepared to vote in favor of this. Even though there wasn't a reduction of costs and there wasn't an increase in turnout, but as the discussion went on, my feeling was, well, what problem is internet voting solving? And I haven't identified what problem it's solving, and I haven't identified if that trade-off is worth, an increased risk. Now, with that said, I'm happy to look at more information here. That's not an issue. But for me, and this is more direction for staff to go back, when we get a further report, if you can please clearly explain to me what problem internet voting is fixing, because to be honest, even if it's a minute increase in risk, I'm not sure if convenience of being able to go out once every 4 years, or being able to vote, from your pajamas at home. At least I hope everybody's wearing pajamas at home. That's where I'd like to understand progress for progress' sake alone. I'm not sure that this is progress. I'm not sure what the problem is that we're solving.
This is a very frustrating scenario that has been put on us tonight, I think, in my opinion. Committee recommends, or doesn't recommend, I suppose, they defeat a staff recommendation to move to internet voting. I can appreciate the fact that probably wasn't an anticipated outcome for staff, considering we're in this predicament we're in now, which is that we didn't give staff a recommendation in time for the deadline for alternative voting, considering that we use an alternative vote as a status quo, which is the tabulators. So we would be reverting back to paper ballots had we not had this put in front of us. I can appreciate that, but what I get frustrated with is that it's one thing if we decide to open it up an item again that we discussed at committee, and all that, and many times opinions change, new information comes to light, people change their vote, it happens, and it's part of the process. But what this has done is that, the report kind of says, well, council could look at internet voting, even though the recommendation was defeated last week. I just think it's a roundabout way. I understand if we had to put a report on the table that said, listen, seeing what happens with the vote on R3, we're going to need to put something forward for the tabulators because we don't have, that's not on the table, that's fine. I just don't appreciate that. It's a comment. I'm not looking for staff to comment on that. This is a comment. I'm not happy with the way this has come about. And quite frankly, speaking to the motion that's on the floor, what is staff, now this is a question, what is staff going to be doing in 30 days to assuage the concerns of councillors at the last meeting. So we raised concerns about, whether there's empirical evidence that supports the increase in voter turnout, security experts that have weighed in at various levels of government, to various committees at various different bodies that talk about the risks to voting and the integrity of our elections. Summarizing the Canadian House of Commons Committee on Electoral Reform, the Legislature of British Columbia Independent Panel on Electoral or Internet Voting, City of Toronto reports, on and on and on. Are we going to get a summary of all those and a report that indicates that here's the recommendations that discuss the various items that we've talked about? Are we going to be engaging with security analysts ourselves? So I just want to get a sense of, if this passes, what's the extra 30 days going to buy us? Is it going to buy us an independent panel that the town's going to put forward to look at internet voting, or are we just going to do what we should have done initially, which was kind of look at all this stuff? So if I could get some comment from staff on what they need the extra 30 days and what that report will look like.
The report that was presented last week was the recommendation of the committee that council struck to give recommendations on this, among other things. The committee recommended internet-only voting, and that's why the recommendation was worded as it was. On page 8 of the report, there are 2 alternatives to the recommendation. If council decided not to go with internet only, which was the option, then there are 2 other options, which was tabulator only or hybrid, which would be a combination of both tabulators and allowing internet voting, presumably in advance polls. My understanding is that all council did was not pass the recommendations and gave no direction to staff on any of the alternatives. So the default then, with no action taken by council, no recommendation, no alternative accepted by council, that without doing anything, you would have been going back to paper ballots and manual counting. And so, not knowing exactly what council wanted to do and reflecting on the comments that were made, this was a mechanism to bring it back to council, because I don't think that the intent was that you wanted to go to paper ballots and manual counting. But you didn't clarify that at the last council meeting. So this extra report was put on to bring the subject back to the table. The 30-day window is simply to allow, you can go back to the recommendations and choose one of those if you don't want to go with the 30 days. But given that you didn't want to make a decision on any of the options last week, the 30 days allows more time for more information should you want to consider any one of the 3 options. So your options tonight are to accept the recommendation on the second report, which would give us these 3 weeks to do whatever you want us to do, bring more information, or just bring back the same 3 options again in 3 weeks, whatever you prefer. Alternatively, you could pick, well, I guess you couldn't pick the one that you defeated, but there's 2 other ones that we had in the previous report that I suppose you could go back to as an alternative recommendation and put the issue to bed tonight.
Again, my question is, the third clause of this, what's on the floor, is that the staff's going to bring forward further information regarding alternative methods. So I'd like to know what the structure of that's going to be and what type of information is going to be brought forward. The idea here is that with more information, the vote would change, might change. So I just would like to know how they're going to structure the report. Is it just going to be a staff report? Because our previous staff report didn't indicate any of these issues, didn't bring up any of these issues. So, I'd just like to know if that can be answered. If not,
I don't have a satisfactory answer for you tonight, Councillor Tom, in terms of what it would look for. I was expecting to be working on one of these methods in the next 3 weeks. So in terms of what it would look like, how this is all going to mesh, I haven't really thought about it, to be completely honest with you.
thank you, Mayor Daw. I'm against the motion on the floor.
First I speak.
From my perspective, I'd like to see some information come back. I think for me, the most important thing is to make voting easier, and I'm talking, for me, from my perspective, is for individuals who can't get to the voting polls as easy as for accessibility issues, people that are, unfortunately can't leave their homes. So for me, if there's an easier way for individuals to participate in their right to vote, then I'd like to have more information on that. I do understand that there's over 92 other municipalities that have moved forward to electronic voting. 97. Haven't heard anything negative from that or positive at this point. It's brand new, but I do feel that for me, it's not a waste of time to come back to explore those opportunities, and I'd like the focus to be on electronic, internet voting. I like that focus more than anything, so that I understand the security aspects of it and the benefit to the community. It does mention the report factor authentication, which is, very tight security methods. From a user perspective, it's very standard in alleviating any risk, but obviously we'd want to know a little bit more about that, and just to understand the experience of whatever system and software application we'll be using, and their success in terms of any problems experienced. But for me, I think it's well worth the investigation, and to come back and focus on internet voting or electronic voting.
Councillor Humphreys hit the nail on the head. Councillor Perry asked, what's the benefit? The benefit is for those voters with disabilities. To be able to, overcome those barriers and exercise their constitutional right to vote in dignity. So that's the benefit. We strive under our strategic plan in every item that comes forward in our agenda. It says at the end, it says we look to improve and provide exceptional quality of life to our residents. Well, I think that's a benefit, and that's improving the quality of life for residents in our town. So that's why I think that this is important for us to move forward. It's not just about doing it because we're progressing and moving forward. It's about doing it to improve the quality of life for our residents. And that's what we're supposed to be doing here. So, I agree with Councillor Tom. Let's just vote on it now. I don't need to wait, but I don't mind waiting to give those that aren't comfortable fully to go ahead and do this. Give them a couple more weeks to think about it, look at it, get some more information, and then make their final decision. But I'm more than comfortable in voting tonight and voting in favor, because I think it's the right thing to do. It's not just doing it because it's moving forward. It's the way of the future. It's the right thing to do. We heard about the report. Councillor Tom brought up the report from Elections Ontario. What it does fail to mention, though, is that in that report, at the time, there was 44 Ontario municipalities and 15 from Nova Scotia that used some form of voting option electronically. Nowhere in that report does it speak about that that it was hacked, that there was that the election was invalid, that it was compromised. It doesn't speak to that anywhere in that report. And it says it also states that not one of those 59 Canadian municipalities cannot safely be tested in an Ontario by-election. So they're not even, it's like they don't even mention it in the report. So they could go out and they could test it, and they could look at these. They didn't even bother doing that. So they're just going on the fact that they don't want to do this. And once again, as we mentioned last week, Mr. Mayor, I know you mentioned it as well. That information is from 2010. It's 2017 now. Things have improved dramatically. So, it's night and day. I don't even think you can compare that study to this one. So, and then when you look at right now, Elections Ontario actually approves mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots are actually, it says here, it uses Elections Ontario uses security criteria, which it says telephone and internet voting cannot overcome, yet Elections Ontario does not insist on these criteria when it speaks to mail-in ballots. So why is it okay to have those risks for mail-in ballots? At the end of the day, there's risks involved in any which way we vote. If we sit here and wait until we get to 100%, we're going to be waiting longer to institute online voting compared to how long it's taken to do Library Square. So, like I said, I'm all in favor of moving forward. If that's the direction that we want to do, we want to get it done, let's get it done tonight, because it's the right thing to do for the quality of life for our residents.
I do want to speak to council and remind everybody why this is in front of us. We established a governance review committee and asked them to look at a variety of issues and advise us, provide some feedback. And so you know, it's my understanding that, you know, they were given considerable information, there was considerable discussion, and they as a group came to this recommendation for council based on the information they provided us. Now, I don't think that all of the information they provided is contained in that 10-page report we received last week, so perhaps there is some value in getting some of the same information that the committee had. Perhaps that may answer some questions, it may not. I can't say without seeing the information, but on top of that, you know, we put some really experienced people on this committee, and I value their opinion. And so I think there's also benefit in hearing from the chair or maybe members of the committee in terms of what was the discussion. Because I'm pretty confident that within the confines of those committee meetings, they were raising the same questions that we are tonight with regards to security, regards to cost, regards to benefits, and yet somehow they came to that recommendation. So maybe it would be helpful for council to hear from the committee in terms of their discussions, their thoughts on these issues, because that may impact how some members of council choose to vote. By understanding why they came to that recommendation, you know, it may help us move forward from here, and that's valuable to me. And so that's why I'm okay with waiting the 30 days to get some of these information, because, you know, I think it's important to hear what the committee has to say. You know, it's unusual these days to invite the chair, but I think that in this case, perhaps it may be helpful in moving forward. And so, you know, I'm supportive of the recommendation forward. You know, ultimately, I'd like to see council be as close to unanimous as possible on how best to move forward. And I think that, you know, perhaps the committee can help us get there.
My comment and my concern is that there should be a communication rollout on how to best inform whatever decision we have. I mentioned it last week at General Committee that under the recommendations, when you do employ this from other municipalities that did it, the ability to communicate and have a good strategy to roll this out is key. So when the report comes back, I'd like that to be front and foremost for my liking as we go ahead with whatever model that we do. So I'm in support of moving forward with the recommendation that is in front of us, and my comments hopefully will be taken into consideration and be brought forward with the report.
I
Thank you.
highly respect everyone on that committee. I frankly was all for every single member who was chosen, and but before that, I mean, I never thought things through until, you know, we were thinking things through prior to when the agenda came out. I'm fine with, you know, if Councillor Humphreys, I'm not sure if there's anyone else, but if she stated that she would, it sounds like she wanted more information and it could sway her decision. And last week's decision was, I believe, 5-3, and that makes it close, and I'm fine with waiting the 30 days. I mean, just regarding, you know, Councillor Marakis' comment, and I respect Councillor Marakis' perspective very much, but I'm not sure if it is the right thing to do. I'm not sure if making the quality of life good for one aspect of society is necessarily at the expense of another aspect of society. You know, frankly, it might be reverse discrimination, frankly. I know I've talked to people who've said, you know, I like going as a family to go out and make a, you know, hopefully not a day out of it, but an hour out of it. I like putting, you know, writing down with a pen and fold up the paper and put it into the ballot box. So for those, and it may not be half or the majority, but there's a significant amount of people who prefer that method, and so we're taking an option away from them so that another segment of the population can have more convenience and comfort, and I don't discount that, that's important, but I think we need to value all segments of society, and if we're going to you know, respect everyone, then we might as well go for the hybrid method and allow all and spend that extra money. So I'm not sure if that's the best argument to have internet voting. So if we're concerned about equity for all, then, you know, we need to, and respect for everyone, then we need to be inclusive of everyone, regardless of whether you have disabilities. And frankly, I don't acknowledge, do they want to be acknowledged as having a disability? I would say that they're equal as everyone else, and they want to be treated as equal as everybody else. And I dare say that some of them may want to come out in the sunlight or in the rain and participate with the rest of the public because they're doing their civic duty. You know, another thing, when I think about this, and I'm very visual, I think about this, you know, the argument about this is the way of the future. Well, you know, when we look at another issue about land planning or development, the way of the future seems to be intensification. But all the municipalities, we get dragged hand and foot into that, we go into the OMB, we do all that. There's a lot of municipal groups who are against change, but we know that over time that change will happen. So I mean, I see a lot of similarities. You know, some people may say that it's not exactly the same. It's not the right example to use, but I think, frankly, I could use that same example, and that you know, change for the sake of change is not the right reason. And as Councillor Peary put it, you know, we're not necessarily solving a problem, and I don't see any other benefits. I'm fine with waiting 30 days. You know, I respect all the members of the committee, and I'd like to hear their perspective as well if the chair is going to come and present. So I'm fine with that. And for, you know, those who are on the fence, and I was last week, I was indifferent, frankly, and it's not going to kill me if it is internet. But in terms of the rationale for changing, it's just not there for me right now. But I'm willing to wait.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I am going to reiterate that I'm not in favor of the motion. I don't appreciate how this was brought forward with respect to what happened at committee last week. I think if we're going to vote on internet voting, which is what this discussion seems to have devolved into, we could have had that discussion again this evening. However, because it has devolved into a discussion on internet voting, I'm going to participate in that discussion. So again, at present, the risks associated with online voting do not outweigh the benefits. There have been a number of studies at independent panels and committees that have looked into this issue. The independent panel on internet voting wrote a 2014 report for the legislature of British Columbia regarding internet voting at the municipal and provincial level in British Columbia. The first recommendation of the report is, and I quote, "Do not implement universal internet voting for either local or provincial government elections at this time. However, if internet voting is implemented, it should be limited for those voters with specific accessibility challenges."
Councillor Perry.
I agree with Councillor Tom. I know what he's doing. And again, that's not what the motion is on the table, and I understand that other people have spoken to it. But I would ask that Mr. Mayor, you make a ruling on whether or not this is in order or out of order, because we're not talking about the merits of internet voting.
Councillor Perry, thank you very much for putting me on that fence. Between the words of that dilemma. You are absolutely correct, sir, but I'm going to allow Councillor Thompson latitude because I did let other people speak. Councillor Tom. Apologies. Thompson. Names. But I would ask you to be brief if I can, please.
I'm going to be as brief as my time allows. As I mentioned, the panel of 2014 to the legislature of British Columbia also looked at, in the section provided, named perceived and actual benefits of internet voting. The following perceived benefits are listed as, quote, not a compelling reason for introducing internet voting. I'll list them off. Increased voter turnout, improved speed and accuracy of results, cost savings of administering internet voting, requires fewer resources for parties and candidates, reduced and eliminated errors made by voters when casting ballots, maintaining relevance by keeping up with other aspects of society. All not a compelling reason according to this committee. City of Toronto commissioned 2 security experts from Concordia and the University of Western Ontario to assess security risks of internet voting for persons with disabilities. So again, not town-wide. Councillor Marac has mentioned that he's in favor of it for persons with disabilities. The 2014 report to the City of Toronto looked at just that, not citywide voting. And because of time implications, I won't go through it all, but their first recommendations, which actually assessed vendors who are applying to an RFP for just persons with disabilities. Their recommendations are quote, "Of the proposals evaluated in the context of the RFP, it is our opinion that no proposal provides adequate protection against the risks inherent in internet voting. It is our recommendation, therefore, that the city not proceed with internet voting in the upcoming municipal election. If the city, contrary to this recommendation, remains committed to the use of internet voting, we advise the system be limited to voters with disabilities and not offered to the electorate at large." The City of Edmonton's Issues Guide for Internet Voting, the Chief Electoral Officer for Ontario, the BC panel, and even our own town clerk in last week's committee presentation have stated that there is no conclusive evidence that introducing internet voting has a positive effect on internet or on voter turnout. It just doesn't exist, it's not there. The special committee, this is something that I didn't know until after the meeting last week. The special committee on electoral reform, which was commissioned by the Trudeau government to look into various updates to our democratic institutions at the federal level, their recommendation in December 2016, so it's just a few months ago, that the Elections Canada not adopt online voting at this time. In addition to what I've stated above, there are many other reports, articles that cast similar doubts as to the desirability of internet voting at this time. For me, the main concern is security and the integrity of our election results, and I spoke about this last week. The staff report was 11 pages long. Even if you just pick either the committee from the House of Commons this past December, I mean, their scope of work went over months. Their reports were dozens of pages. They interviewed security experts, elections officials, and they came up with a report. In the case of the House of Commons committee, the independent panel from BC came up with a report, dozens of pages long. I mean, this is important stuff we're talking about here. And so I asked the clerk and I asked staff, even in the 30 days we're going to give them with the passing of this motion, what's going to come forward in terms of a report, and I didn't get an answer. I don't know what we're going to bring back. So, I think we're talking about a fundamental change to how we conduct elections in the town, and I appreciate the work that the committee did, but the fruit of that, at least from a council perspective, the fruit of that, the report or the committee's work was an 11-page staff report that didn't really address any of these issues. And again, I appreciate the committee's time and effort, and I don't want to, trample all over the work that they've done. But this is a fundamental issue with respect to our elections, and I just think if we're going to make a change, a significant change, we should have the information, and it should be done right. And so, at this time, I haven't seen that evidence, and again, staff hadn't comforted me with their answer to my earlier question about what we're going to get back in 30 days. So, to summarize my points, the cost savings will be minimal. The report indicated that. There's no evidence that internet voting will increase voter turnout. And those are my comments. I'll be voting against this and internet voting.
There is a sort of historical tradition in voting, and our family does make a day of it. We go and we all do our voting, and there's a tradition behind that. But I do believe that in all aspects of development and moving forward, that sometimes we need to look at alternative ways of doing things. And I believe the 30-day report will allow, what I'm hoping that staff will bring forward, along with the recommendations by the committee, is some of obviously the benefits, the pros, the cons, anything in terms of savings and costs for elections. For me, there was some touch on accessibility. It's absolutely not to single any one group out. It's to pave the way to allow everyone to vote. And some people, it's not just your typical what you think of. It can be seniors that can't leave their bed or their room or whatever, and their family would love to help them with their tabulator in front of their iPad. And hey, Mom, here's here's how. What are you thinking? And it allows everyone to do their part and vote, which is a wonderful privilege that we have. So for me, I'm not afraid of the report. I want to see a report come back. You've heard, the staff has heard the concerns around the table. So when the report is being developed, if you can come back with those concerns, and it sounds like security is a big one. Risk. Tampering of information, and I'd also like to understand clearly the benefits. And again, there's many municipalities out there that have this already. I'm sure we can go back and find information and what they feel is positive. So from my perspective, I would like to move forward. I support what's on the table, and hopefully we can get through this in the next few minutes.
I agree with what the gentleman on the other side of the table have said. I thank Councillor Tom for his work. He's done a lot of work on this. My research was very simple. I wanted to know what they did in the state of California. California to me is a bellwether state. They're always ahead of the curve. And they use old-fashioned voting at all levels of government. I'm not opposed to hearing what staff will bring forward to us or what the committee may have considered in making their decision. But at the moment, I am opposed to internet voting.
Call the vote. My position on the floor. I'm in favor. Calling the vote. Linda, would you open the... Well, I could go on forever. Okay, so all those in favor? Yep. No, those. All in favor. So yeah, the vote should be up. Yay or nay on your screen. Yes? Okay, those who vote nay. And if you can press your button on your screen, please, Councillor. If you've done that, Linda, if you close the vote, please. Motion carries. Thank you very much, committee, for coming out. We appreciate you.
We had the long debate about the internet voting. I recently spoke to Mayor Scarpitti from Markham, and considering they've instituted it since 2003, I felt that maybe it might be helpful for all of us if someone from Markham could come and maybe just let us maybe present on their experiences. And then Mayor Scarpitti has graciously said that he'd be willing to come with his clerk if we sent an invitation. So if I could just maybe put a motion on the floor that if maybe we extend an invitation to Mayor Scarpitti and the clerk and ask them to come back when that report does come back and they can present on their experiences in Markham.
Perhaps I could be refreshed on the procedural bylaw, but new business. We did discuss internet voting as an item to this agenda. Is this the appropriate avenue to add motions to that already refer to an agenda item? It is? Perhaps I get a ruling from the clerk, just to know. I don't know what those two.
So can we add a motion to an existing item on the agenda during new business? New business, that's not the intent of new business, but in terms of what's actually in the new business portion of the procedural bylaw, it's really silent on that.
I think I'm happy to have Mayor Scarpitti come, and I think it's great that Councilor Marac has extended that invitation even before council. But I would also ask then, if we're going to start inviting experts and witnesses to testify on the benefits or lack of benefits of internet voting, that we extend the invitation to various groups and various people. So I'm happy to have the mayor come and talk about his experience in Markham, but I think what I was looking for in terms of an answer when we talked about this earlier was what is staff's plan in terms of what information and people or experts they're going to be asking, bringing forward. So my comment is, great, we're bringing the mayor of Markham in to talk about how he perceives internet voting. If we're going to do that, then I'd like to know what plan staff have to bring in other experts with potentially differing views.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think the intention was to bring him as an expert. The intention is to bring him here just to explain the experiences and present on the experiences. And he's not going to tell us which way we should vote or how we should vote. He just figured to explain, since they've been doing it since 2003, what the experiences are as an elected official and as a municipality. And also, if you want to actually talk about an expert, the clerk that would be coming is the chief election officer. So in essence, a clerk is an expert when it comes to elections.
So it's a good point that Councillor Tom makes, and I'm not resistant to having a guest speaker and share their experience. But just to make it objective, then maybe have invite another municipality's mayor and their clerk in term who decided not to go ahead with internet voting. It would be nice to hear both sides. if you hear one, I think it would be good to hear both sides. So that's my.
So Councilor Atkins is going to withdraw his motion. Is that okay with the seconder? Okay.